What is up, all? Elm Street Warrior here with another video. And today I want to do a video on horror sequels. Now, we all know horror sequels can either make or break. Today, I'm going to be doing a video of my top 10 favorite horror sequels of all time. Some are going to be controversial. For anyone that follows me on Instagram, I post about sequels all the time because I feel like sequels are some are very misunderstood, and then there are some that are completely awesome that surpass their originals. But today we're going to do my top 10 favorite sequels. So starting with number 10, we're going to go with Halloween 3. This one I can say for the most part has grew on me in my adult years. I didn't really appreciate this movie as much as a kid and thought it was just stupid. But I rewatched this a couple of years ago, and I must say, if you take away the Michael Myers aspect and completely go in this with a different set of mind, this is actually not bad for what it was. Tom Atkins delivers a stellar performance. And, I must say, this is a very dark horror movie involving children. I feel like Halloween 3 definitely misunderstood, though I will say, it is amazing to see this movie get a lot more love now than what it did then, because I don't feel like the world was ready to see Michael Myers go then. So I feel like that's kind of why this did not fare well at the box office. As many horror fans have said, including myself, I think if this wouldn't have been called Halloween 3 and this would have been called something else, it would have did a lot better. But I must say, I definitely appreciate Halloween 3, and I fucks with it all of the way. Number 9, The Rage Carrie 2. This is one no one talks about at all. The Rage Carrie 2 definitely underrated, and definitely this was like towards the end of 90s horror, because this like came out in 99. uh very underrated. I thought this was pretty good for what it was. I remember catching this at a young age on Sci-Fi Channel and watching it, and I absolutely adored it. I feel like the story to this was pretty good. It unfortunately deals with date rape culture, but skip ahead. Once you get to her getting revenge on her bullies, just as satisfying as the original was. Number 8, we have Scream 3. This is one I see people hate on a lot for whatever reason, and I don't know. Scream 3, I definitely feel like is the most entertaining in the franchise. This is actually ranked my number second in the franchise after the first one. I don't know. Scream 3 was just a lot of fun. I thought out of all of the Scream films, this one probably had the most entertaining characters. There's a pretty solid killer in this too. For anyone that's seeing this, I don't feel like this Ghostface killer gets enough credit because he or she, I'm not going to spoil who it is, they acted alone. They didn't even have a partner. And, Scream 3 kind of connects everything together, mainly the events of part 1 and 2. And I don't know, Scream 3 was just a lot of fun. This is definitely my second favorite in the franchise after the first one. Next up, we have Return of the Living Dead 2. I gotta be quite honest, I actually like this one over the original one. This was the first Return of the Living Dead I ever watched. I watched this one way before I did the first one, and this was another one I remember catching on the Sci-Fi Channel as a kid. I must say the Sci-Fi Channel used to show a lot of horror movies back in like the early 2000s. I remember catching a lot on that channel, but this Lord Behold was another one that I caught on there. And I remember I had a lot of fun with this one. I don't really care for the first one, and I actually enjoyed this one more. And it's actually funny because when I met Tom Matthews at a con a couple years ago, I remember telling him I enjoyed part 2 more than one. And it sounded like he was kind of disappointed to hear that. And I remember him actually saying, "You'll come around to like the first one." But I don't know, the first one really wasn't doing it for me. And I thought this one was a lot better. So, Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Next up, we have Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Not as good as Dream Master Part 4, but with that being said, this isn't a bad Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street is one of those franchises where I pretty much have liked all of the films in the franchise, minus the remake, but the rest of them I have liked. There are some Nightmare on Elm Streets I feel like that are stronger than others, but I didn't completely disregard this one. This does have one of my favorite deaths in the franchise in it, and that's involving Greta with the food scene. I thought that was really well done. And I don't know, I really enjoyed Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Like I said, obviously, I don't enjoy it as much as Dream Master. But with that being said, I don't write this one off completely. It's not the worst Nightmare on Elm Street in the franchise. Next up, we have Pet Cemetery 2. First of all, this movie, this is another one that does not get enough credit. And let me just say, for anyone that has watched Pet Cemetery 2, Clancy Brown is truly the MVP of this movie all of the way for anyone that has seen it. I cannot count that and say that enough. Clancy Brown is truly the MVP of this movie. He just completely sells it, and when he goes in, it's just a nonstop ride with this. Don't get it twisted. Edward Furlong did decent in this too, but let's be real. Clancy Brown was truly the star of Pet Cemetery too, and I don't know. He made this movie so much fun and just so enjoyable. I like the first one, I do, but I don't know. I kind of like Pet Cemetery 2 a little bit more just because, I don't know, it was the first one I watched before I watched the first one. So I don't know. This holds a special place in my heart. And this is yet another one that I remember catching on a sci fi channel as a kid. So yeah, definitely recommend Pet Cemetery 2. Next up, we have Candyman 3. First of all, I didn't really care for Candyman Farewell of the Flesh. And so this one I watched next, and I must say, this was more enjoyable than Farewell in the Flesh. Unpopular opinion, but I don't know. This Candyman really was way better. And I don't know, there's a death in this movie that I always remembered in my mind because it's one of those deaths that just stays engraved in your mind once you watch it. So, yeah, I definitely recommend Candyman Day of the Dead. This is one that people roast a lot, but this is one I recommend going into with your own thoughts and your own opinions because I don't know. But I really, really enjoyed Day of the Dead. Just unpopular opinion. Next up, we have Alien 3. Alien 3 is another one that I must say, I actually did not mind Alien 3. Coming off of the sequel Aliens, which was great in itself, but this wasn't a bad one either. I must say, I must see this movie does not get a lot of love, and this one gets some hate too. But I did not mind Alien 3. I definitely think this is a misunderstood sequel, and I don't know, I kind of liked the story that they went with in this one. It was unfortunate because Ellen Ripley dies at the end of this one. But with that being said, I definitely did not mind Alien 3. I feel like Alien 2 and Alien 3 are up there for me. I pretty much like them both. So this one was tolerable to me. Next up, we have I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, an enjoyable sequel. And I hate to say it, dare I say it, enjoy this one more than the first one. So much fun. The characters, so much fun. Obviously, Brandy being in it and surviving the movie, that was a highlight. Jack Black being in the movie and him just being hilariously bad, highlight of the movie also. You know, I must say, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is number one. I like the first one, but I don't know. This one was just true and dear to my heart. Absolutely love I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. And number one, the number one sequel that I am about to go with, this is probably about to raise some eyebrows, but I gotta do it. No other than Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation. This movie is just completely hilarious. I don't know, just hilariously bad. I must say, Matthew McConaughey really is wild in this movie, and it's just completely hilarious to watch from beginning to end. This movie is already hilarious. I can't imagine watching this movie while being stoned because it probably would be 10 times more funnier than it already is. This is just hilariously bad. I don't recommend going into this movie at all seriously because you're going to be disappointed. But with that being said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, so much fun and so much wildness that goes on in this sequel that you're seriously like, what the fuck is this? But I don't know. This is a guilty pleasure of mine. I do like this movie. I don't care saying that. I have no shame in saying that I definitely enjoy Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation. Just completely an hilarious ride from beginning to end. And that's pretty much all of my top 10 sequels that I feel like are my favorite and they don't suck. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel Elm Street Warrior. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram, Elm Street Warrior. Thank you for watching, and until next time, guys.